Picture this. It's August 2026. You've got a World Cup winner, a Chelsea vice captain, and a massive £106.8 million investment on the pitch. But as Enzo Fernández took the armband against Real Sociedad recently, Stamford Bridge was, well, it was a house totally divided. You could hear these audible boos just clashing directly with passionate chants of his name. In this era where modern player power is constantly colliding with club leverage, you gotta ask, is he a star desperately seeking a path to a winning team, or is he just a prisoner of a massive £120 million transfer deadline? Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're fact-checking this billion-pound saga that's pushed Chelsea and Manchester City to the absolute brink. Let's dig into the hard evidence and see what's actually going on here. Okay, let's take a quick look at our dossier for today. We'll start with the £120 million standoff, examine the case against Enzo, and then look at the defense of Fernández. After that, we'll uncover Chelsea's transfer trap, analyze Alonso's blueprint, and finally map out 3 possible outcomes. All right, part 1, the £120 million standoff. To really grasp the scale of this standoff, we need to trace exactly how fast things escalated. Back in May 2026, reports first emerged that Chelsea and Fernández's reps sat down and discussed a £120 million valuation. You know, one that would theoretically let him exit in the summer. But man, things got messy fast. In early summer, Fernández publicly said he'd like to play for Real Madrid one day, a comment that actually got him dropped from the squad for 2 matches. Then, July 15 hits. Argentina beats England in the World Cup semifinal. Now, while Fernández wasn't named among the players holding that controversial political banner, that international diplomatic tension definitely cast a shadow over his return to London. Fast forward to August 14th, 5 p.m. Chelsea's self-imposed deadline for Man City, or literally anyone else, to bid passes with 0 formal offers. The very next day, he returns to the pitch to a highly polarized reception. And then, by August 19th, reports break that Chelsea has actively increased their demands beyond that original valuation. Crazy, right? £120 million. I mean, just think about that number for a second. That is the sheer financial weight of this situation. When Chelsea's massive cutoff point for Manchester City was missed, a straightforward transfer negotiation transformed into a high-stakes game of chicken between 2 of the wealthiest clubs on the planet. Moving on to part 2, the case against Enzo. If we look at the prosecution's case in the court of public opinion, it really boils down to 4 main frustrations that are just driving a wedge through the fan base right now. First off, there's this strong perception that Fernández wants to jump ship simply because Chelsea failed to qualify for the Champions League. Second, supporters are pointing to that public flirtation with Real Madrid as a massive sign of disrespect to the club that made him a British transfer record signing. Third, you've got the shadow of those World Cup diplomatic tensions. Look, his personal involvement with that controversial Las Malvinas banner is completely unproven, but his mere presence in the squad during that heated time, it made him a lightning rod for criticism when he got back to England. And finally, the ultimate betrayal for these fans, his reported willingness to join a direct Premier League rival in Manchester City, specifically to replace the Barcelona-bound Rodri. So the question is he really just a star looking for an easy exit, or is he a consummate professional operating under immense pressure? Which brings us to part 3, the defense of Fernández. Now, this angry fanbase narrative heavily contrasts with the hard evidence of his actual professionalism. Yes, there are City rumors, and yeah, there are Madrid flirtations. But let's look at the defense here. There is absolutely no confirmed report of him submitting a formal transfer request. None. When he returned to training amidst all this noise, he just got right back to work. In fact, upon entering that match against Real Sociedad, he immediately took the captain's armband from Reece James. That is a massive indicator that he still holds the deep respect of the dressing room and, crucially, of manager Xabi Alonso. And, you know, it's wild to see how quickly a stadium's mood can pivot. Despite those initial boos during the Sociedad match, supportive chants of "Oh, Enzo Fernández" eventually rang out and totally drowned out the negativity. This proves he still has significant backing from a majority of the fan base. These are fans who feel he's being unfairly targeted for transfer speculation he didn't necessarily start, and for political controversies where his involvement remains entirely unproven. All right, Section 4, Chelsea's transfer trap. When we take a step back and look at the broader mechanics of astronomical transfer fees, it becomes pretty clear that Chelsea may have engineered an impossible situation here. By setting a super rigid £120 million deadline and then reportedly hiking up the asking price once that clock ran out, Chelsea essentially punished Manchester City for missing the cutoff. But the irony here, it's astounding. In doing so, they might have completely priced their own player out of a move. Critics are accusing the club of prioritizing financial optics and pride, basically just refusing to easily help a rival solve a midfield problem over actual squad harmony. And to add fuel to the fire, Chelsea has been actively scouting replacements while Fernandez is literally still in the building. When you've got players like Bournemouth's Alex Scott and Arsenal's Martin Zubamendi on their radar, you're looking at a perfect recipe for dressing room instability. The club is essentially trapped, right? They're caught between holding onto a massive asset and preparing for a sudden departure.
Section 5. Alonso's Leverkusen Blueprint.
Because, look, while the executives are upstairs arguing over millions, Xabi Alonso actually has a football team to manage. And despite all the outside noise, Enzo Fernández remains an absolute tactical cornerstone in Alonso's 3-4-3 formation. His technical ability to dictate play from deep provides the exact tactical stability this team desperately needs, and we are seeing the results right there on the pitch. Because of that stability in the midfield, new stars are shining bright. João Pedro has become the absolute standout of the Alonso era, bagging 7 preseason goals, including a brace against Sociedad. Meanwhile, record-signing Morgan Rogers, he scored just 11 minutes into his debut. The attacking unit is clearly clicking, and Fernandez's presence anchoring that midfield is a huge reason why.
And finally, Section 6. 3 possible outcomes. So, as we look at the final days of the transfer window, we are staring down 3 distinct realities. Outcome 1. A late blockbuster. Manchester City, absolutely desperate to replace Rodri, swallows their pride and returns with an astronomical bid exceeding £130 million to finally break Chelsea's resolve. Outcome 2. The Real Madrid swoop. Madrid, who already snagged Marc Cucurella from Chelsea this summer, makes a sudden late play, leveraging Fernandez's previous public comments about wanting to play there. Or outcome 3. Perform and reintegrate. No bid meets Chelsea's newly increased asking price. Enzo stays at Stamford Bridge, and he organically wins back the full support of the fans through his undeniable performances in Alonso's system. Fact: Chelsea set the price. Fact: City missed the deadline. Fact: the bridge is deeply divided. So I want to leave you with this final, crucial question to render your own verdict on this explainer. Who is truly the most responsible for this billion-pound mess? Is it Enzo Fernández, Manchester City, or Chelsea's management? Thank you so much for joining me for this deep dive into the data and the facts. Let this question sit with you and keep a very close eye on how these final days play out.